Hello friends, this is Growl. Happy patch 915 day. I just finished my MDI adventures this weekend and I'm ready to get back to YouTube and Twitch streaming. I'm going to kick off a new series tentatively called the Wafflecat Weekly. I sat for a while trying to think of a good name. If you guys have something better, please leave it in the comments below because I don't know if this one's going to stick. So every Tuesday when I turn on my stream, I'm always flooded by questions about what did I get in my vault, what items did I take, and my thoughts on the current week's affixes. I also never really talk about this stuff on YouTube, and I'm sure there's a lot of people here wondering this stuff as well. In this video, I'm going to open all my vaults for all my healers, and we can talk about what I'm looking for and what I'm taking. I'm also going to talk about this week's affixes and try and give some helpful advice on tackling Mythic Plus this week. I also want to use these videos to talk about some stuff, specifically about the channel, or maybe my thoughts about current events, or just things that I want to talk about that don't quite warrant their own video. So without going on too much longer, let's jump right in. So these boxes are going to be probably a little bit less exciting than usual. I have been really busy with MDI. I managed to sneak in a few weekly keys yesterday before I went to bed for my slumber, and now we're ready to open. I think I have 1 item on all my guys and 2 on my pally. No raid items, unfortunately. The biggest thing almost all my guys are lacking, and I'm sure a lot of you guys can relate, are these domination socket items. I do manage to have a max level Lego, a 252 weapon, and some decent trinkets on most of my guys. I think the best thing I can hope for on Prodigy is probably either a pair of gloves or a new trinket. Like this guy saying his prayers, wants his speed items. Don't forget to check your loot spec when you're opening your boxes. And we are greeted with a first mastery belt. Generally speaking, on healers, when I'm trying to do high keys, I avoid stuff that's high in mastery, just because mastery doesn't contribute to your damage. I think it would be cool in the future if they made it so mastery did something for healer damage, sort of like how it does for tanks. So unfortunately, it looks like we're taking tokens today on our Mistweaver. I lined up all my guys at my Great Vault just so this video wouldn't be too much loading screens and walking around town, so hopefully it shouldn't be too bad. Although since today was a patch day, I not sure how well my add-ons are working. I'm actually a little scared of opening MDT later for the Affix section. I blindly just updated all my add-ons before I logged in. It's probably not recommended. So our druid is hurting pretty bad in the trinkets and ring departments. Growl's been a lot less fortunate than Prodigy in terms of gear. I've been rocking the Night Fae Lego. I don't know if I like it, to be honest. It feels a little bit underwhelming, both for healing and damage. It's kind of fun to convoke a lot, but I think I'd rather just play Swiftmend if I wanted healing, or like a full damage Lego if I wanted to play a damage one. One thing you can do on intellect healers is switch to a DPS spec, just because generally speaking, I would rather have a DPS trinket on most of my healers than the healing trinkets from Mythic Plus. A lot of times the healing trinkets can just be a little bit junky, where at least the DPS ones you can just kind of use as a filler. So we have another haste mastery helm. It's a slight upgrade to the one we have. We get a little more haste and a little less mastery. Growl is, he doesn't have too much haste nowadays. I think for druids you probably want to shoot towards something like 30% haste or close to it. So a little bit of haste, leveling up, but nothing too exciting. All right, let's check out our priest. My druid and my Mistweaver are pretty neglected, but as we get into my priest and my shaman, they start to have pretty good gear, so it can be kind of hard to find upgrades for them. And I'll be very surprised if we find an upgrade for my pally, just because my pally has mythic raid gear. Looking forward to getting back to raiding just so I can get some of the last few raid pieces I need. And this is another spec where I'll open it as shadow. It depends on what sort of trinkets there are. For example, last year, I might even still have it in my inventory. The tuft was a really good healer trinket, so I would always open as a healer if I had raid boxes. But generally speaking, there's not any good healer Mythic Plus trinkets. All right, so we got some crit haste gloves. This is actually a pretty big upgrade. Not only do we up our item levels, but we also get rid of some mastery for some crit. So this is a very welcome addition to our priest. Check out our gear in our priest. I didn't even look at it actually. Honestly, there's not too much hope in me playing much but Paladin and high keys this season, just because raid gear is so important, and I've only really been raiding on that guy. Unless they come out with some sort of like domination socket vendor, I don't think any of my other guys will see any high keys. My priest is actually looking pretty good, almost 250 item level. I actually like this trinket as a filler trinket for healers. I sort of mentioned that I like DPS trinkets. It does pretty good single target damage, especially with a healer that doesn't do that much single target damage. It just sort of adds up. Something like, you know, Priest, for example. And I have a 152 IQD as well. Cool. So, upgrades on 2 of our guys so far. Let's see our Shaman. Yeah, unfortunately, the chance of getting upgrades this late into the season when you're not raiding is quite low. Looking forward to see what they do in the future for Mythic Plus gearing. It seems like they're trending towards the direction of having you not need to raid, making Mythic Plus gear better and better, minus the Dom socket. So again, I'm opening this vault in Elemental spec. What do we need on this guy? This guy is pretty dang good gear. We have received boots, some crit haste boots. Wow, this has got to be one of the few things that I actually needed. We will absolutely take these. Man, maybe I have to record these more often. This is how you get the streamer luck, I guess. So we have a couple really nice rings. Where's our boots that we just got? So now we replace these. Yeah, our Shaman is looking pretty good, actually. We could use it to... The main problem is we're just missing some domination socket stuff, but we have pretty nice trinkets. I found a leech changeling on this guy. We have 2 weekly chest rings. Pretty well statted other stuff. Crit haste isn't ideal. I do like to have a lot of verse on my Shaman, but with my gear I have 18% because of my rings, so that's fine by me. Alright, last but not least, our Paladin. I haven't even looked at the affixes. I think it's explosive raging, fortified raging explosive. That's what I prepared in my head for talking about the affixes, so we may have to do an impromptu study session if it's not that. Okay, so Paladin, unfortunately, you can't open as a DPS spec. So the big things I'm looking for on this guy, my verse is really low and my haste is a little bit too high. Ideally, you'd like over 20% verse, and over 30% haste, you start to run out of mana. The biggest culprits right now are I have pants that are really high haste with no verse on them that I'd like to swap out. Possibly this ring, but this is the really good verse heavy ring. There's not really too much I can do with my rings here. Really, there's not a whole lot I can do. I need the shoulders from Sylvanas, and I need an upgraded helm as well, but I'm not going to be able to get any of this because I didn't raid last week. So I guess we're praying for the Halls of Atonement legs, or maybe some sort of really good like leech ring or something. Oh wow, okay, we're definitely recording. We're definitely recording and doing these videos for all of my weekly vaults forever, because our prayers have been answered. One of the few upgrades we can get on this guy we got, so we will take these. So we'll check out how these impact our stats. So we have 14 verse, 33% haste, and we get just perfect, just a little bit less haste, a little bit more verse. What else do we really want on this guy? Obviously, one thing that we're low on is our leech and our avoidance. It sounds a little bit silly, but when we have a season like this that goes on for months and months and months, having that leech and avoidance stack up can actually make a pretty big deal in dealing with some crazy tyrannical bosses. So I have this leech cape, but it's not very good. It's got mastery on it. It doesn't have any verse. Being asked to attack keys. So it looks like we might boot up the stream here. Coming up. All right, so, well, we got some upgrades. Excited about that. Good luck to everyone else opening their boxes. Now let's talk about the affixes this week. We are right. So we have Fortified, Raging, Explosive, Tormented. So just a few words of advice for this week. I would say this is an average-ish week. I think raging usually isn't too bad as long as you have a tank that's aware. I think explosive isn't too bad as well. It can be a bit annoying to constantly deal with explosives in every dungeon, especially as a healer when, you know, you need to be healing and your DPS aren't killing them. However, I do think it's mostly a healer's responsibility in a coordinated group. That being said, when you're in pugs, I would recommend just trying to make this a team effort. You should probably go into every key this week if it's a pug, expecting to have to kill somewhere between, you know, 20 to 30% of the explosives at least. There's a cool details add-on here if you want to track how you're doing. You have to download this separately on like WoWup or CurseForge or whatever, and you get a script here called Dynamic Overall Explosives, and you can actually see who's targeting them and who's killing them. So, you know, not that we would say anything to our teammates, but just to pat ourselves on the back a little bit to see that we're doing it. I would make sure that even if there's a button that you don't normally use, like for instance Frost Shock on Resto Shaman, you have that bound and you're using it to kill explosives. Healers that have that really fast spammable button are at a little bit of an advantage. Paladins actually suffer a little bit from killing explosives. You can try and auto attack them down, but it's actually feels pretty bad to have to use your Holy Shock or your Judgment to have to kill them. Let's see if we can open MDT. Uh-oh. Just click this. Okay, good. I'm not going to touch much here. I'm not going to touch much. I'm kind of worried the patch broke our thing, but we can talk about some of the dungeons here. So another thing that's important this week is to bring a Soothe. One thing that's very common in Shadowlands is to just have lots of mini bosses in every single dungeon. For example, these shards and Halls of Atonement. In the other side, you have these really big warlords that need the Soothe. And so in general, you should always have a Soothe when you go into dungeons. Rogues can Soothe, but I think it's a 20-second cooldown. So usually you want something either like a druid or a hunter or something that can be a little bit more spammable. But, you know, if you have to make do, then I guess a rogue will do fine. Make sure you don't end up in a dungeon without a Soothe. It's just sort of a thing that, well, why wouldn't you bring one? Another thing about raging that I want to talk about is when you use your like stuns and externals, you might not know, like a tank might not always be aware to kite right when raging hits. Also, maybe you may be limited on space. For example, these hallways in DOS, your tank might not be able to kite very far. So you want to save your stuns, you like your leg sweep or ring of peace, maybe your iron bark or your blessing of sacrifice. You want to save that stuff when the mobs are low. Usually you can just kind of send them whenever once the tank gets threat, but this is a good time especially to kind of hold off and use them towards the end of the pull. The last thing I want to talk about is the powers this week. So explosive is actually kind of interesting and you can take some pretty cool powers for it. One of them, I'm scared to click on anything, is Vial of Desperation. Whenever you take more than 25% of your health, you get a movement speed buff and you suffer less damage. Most of your wipes this week are going to come from explosive plus other stuff, and taking Vial of Desperation, since none of these powers are too good on your DPS, makes you a lot more durable when an explosive goes off. I don't know how great this is, but I do think it's something that, well, none of these other powers are that impressive anyway, so it's something that's kind of cool to pick up. And the last one I wanted to talk about is bolstering. So if you didn't know, the Signet of Bolstering, the DPS power, actually triggers off of explosives. So it's just constantly feeding really, really high stacks. If you noticed in the MDI, most teams prefer to go left into Ardenweald, but during explosive, teams would go right, specifically to get to Incinerator and get this bolstering power fast. So if you're a DPS player this week, I would highly recommend grabbing this Signet of Bolstering. You don't even need to be the one that gets the explosive kills. If anyone on your team gets them, everyone gets these stacks of bolstering. So it's really, really, really strong. In terms of what dungeons are good or bad this week, I would say everything's about average. Mists of Tyrannus Scythe you might have a little bit of a struggle with. Some of these trash packs can be really dangerous on raging, you know, like these soul cleavers in the beginning or some of the stuff at the end that'll just one-shot your team. Another thing you need to look out for is explosive orbs on Mistcaller. When she starts the guessing game and spawns the little clones everywhere, each one of those clones will spawn explosive. So you have to watch out for those and have someone assigned almost to look for them. Other than that, I can't think of any really big problems here. It's a little tough to come off of like a tyrannical week that doesn't do much trash damage to go into a fort bolstering week. You always sort of have to have that presence of mind of watching out for the trash packs getting low, but there's really not too much you have to worry about. Sanguine Depths is one that there are a lot of caster mobs and range mobs that might sit in raging for a long time. For example, these scribes in the hallway, you may notice that if they're not stacked in melee, let's say the tank needs to kite for raging, the scribes end up separated from the pack, and since your DPS only cares about doing a lot of AoE, they may not kill these scribes right away, and they'll just be throwing raging books the whole time. So just watch out for some of the casters and some of the ranged mobs in here. Other than that, I don't think there's too many extremely difficult pulls or dungeons or situations here. Most of the pulls or stuff going on in Shadowlands is kind of small. You know, spires, explosive can be a bit annoying, mainly because there's a lot of kicks and interrupts and stuff that you have to track. Raging and spires can also be a little bit tough. I'd say spires may be one of the more difficult dungeons this week, just because of all the raging cast potential that has to go off on top of all the, you know, you have to worry about explosive orbs. There's just a whole lot you have to juggle in between each pack, especially in a pug, when, you know, people aren't juggling anything and they're just karate chopping their keyboard and they're not kicking anything. So that goes over my thoughts on the affixes this week. Lastly, I want to talk about my plans for the channel. Looks like we might not be closing our MDT. Hold on, let me try and reload my UI. So I want to talk about my plans on the channel and what I think going forward. You know, I know there's a lot of creators that have been talking about their thoughts on WoW and, you know, their drive to play or their guild or whatever. And I just want to let everyone know that, I'll be honest, I'm still kind of enjoying WoW. I really had fun playing MDI. I'm looking forward to the Great Push. I want to be playing in that soon. And I've still been enjoying WoW. You know, and WoW's a game where if I'm not enjoying it, I don't really have a problem taking a break and going towards something else. There's a few games that I look forward to playing. One of them I'm already playing is Diablo 2 Remastered. I haven't been streaming or doing any sort of video content for that much. I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a disservice to you guys if I've gone dark for so long working on MDI and then coming back with a game that's not even WoW. I think that might be in my head and not really a thing, but it's just something that I'm not really comfortable with yet. But in the future, I do kind of want to go towards some other games, not because anything of WoW, just because, well, there's, you know, other games that I like too. Lost Ark, the closed beta is coming up in a few days, and I'm probably going to play a little bit of that. It is a beta, so it's not something that I plan on going super hard with or anything, and to be honest, it's not a game that I think will replace WoW. It's more just a side for fun thing that hopefully I can do with my friends. I earlier mentioned Great Push. I do want to do the MDI Great Push. That was really fun last time. I think the competition is always fierce because you get some of the live push groups that don't necessarily play in MDI. And also, I just want to support other Mythic Plus sort of esports and ideas, and, you know, whenever they want to inject some interest in Mythic Plus, I want to be there to support it. And it was fun. The one problem that I have that I'm a little worried about is the streaming and YouTube side of it. This last MDI took so much longer than I thought it was going to. To be honest, I didn't even know if we would qualify for global finals, and even that, I didn't know how much we were going to practice. It was really nutty, to be honest, and I didn't expect to step away from YouTube and from my Twitch stream that long. And I definitely don't want to have to do that again, at least in the immediate future. So I'm going to talk with my team, and I'm going to hope that maybe we can do a little bit more streaming. One of the things that's cool about Great Push is it's not part of the like WoW esports official package or whatever, so we can stream that. I think we can stream basically anything we want to. Obviously, as a competitor, we want to win, and streaming may hurt our chances of winning, but especially if some of the other teams are streaming too and it's not necessarily an advantage that we're giving up, I want to try and stream and make more content focus on the Great Push so that you guys can share that experience with me. And lastly, I want to talk about my extended the YouTube drought. I haven't been putting out videos too much. It's been a mix of two different things. The main one is that I've been playing MDI and just been busy there. You know, that's a little bit self-explanatory. Another thing is I lost my video editor. I had a guy who I really enjoyed working with. You know, he helped me with such great hits as look at the numbers and the viewer heals the +20 key. He did a really good job, and he's just off doing other things now, hasn't had the time to work on some videos, so I'm kind of back to doing my own thing for now. So that definitely has slowed me down a little bit. And also there's just a little bit of a content drought in WoW. I don't think we can pretend that there's tons of stuff to do in WoW, and when there's not as many patches and not as many dungeons and not as much stuff to do, it's just a little harder to make videos. But I've been thinking about how I can still keep things interesting, because I do like to play the game. I still play the game, and I'm trying to think of some new series and things that I can do on YouTube. I want to come back to some of my older videos, for example, reviewing viewer keys and Pug Adventures keys. Those are definitely going to come back. To be honest, I have some of those saved. I just haven't had the chance to, you know, chop them up and get them ready for YouTube. Just been slacking a little bit there. Another series is this one that I want to start. I want to start, you know, opening my boxes and doing a weekly update and talking about the affixes, and just kind of like a checkup sort of video. And lastly, I'm kind of thinking about an idea where I do sort of like a beginner-centric guided playthrough. I've been really enjoying the videos from Mr. Llama, who plays Diablo 2 Remastered, and he has a series where he does sort of a long play of a new character, and he talks about mostly the basics, you know, not really like a guide, but more like, hey, this is what you know, if you're starting to play this character, this is what you have to expect, or just to give people an idea of what it's like to play that character. And I kind of thought it would be an interesting idea to do something like that in WoW. For example, let's say I just got like a fresh level 60 druid, and I just sort of queued some mythic zeros or some even heroic dungeons, or what, I don't even know what you can queue when you're a fresh level 60, and just sort of talked about the real basics and what it's like being a healer, and what are some of the basic buttons you should press, and sort of to get the experience, you know, that you guys can see. So let me know what you would think about that series, or if you have any ideas about something I can do to improve that. Also, any suggestions for any future series or ideas that we can do. Be sure to check out the GG WoW channel as well. I mentioned not having an editor, but they have editors over there, and we do tons of cool, you know, if you're looking for more of the meme content where we, you know, play with random people or play keys with, you know, handicaps and just silly stuff like that you'd see sometimes on this channel, I would highly recommend checking out the GG WoW channel, because we've been doing tons of stuff like that over there. We've been doing the I think we had like an Among Us match where we switched players and we tried to grief each other's run, and we had a run where we played with like no weak auras or UI and stuff like that. So hopefully you guys have all seen that channel already, but if not, go check it out. And that just about wraps up this video. It went on a little longer, but since this was the first one and I wanted to kind of add on a little channel update at the end, I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know if you have any feedback or thoughts or anything like that in the comments, and happy keying, friends.